Hi, Rob Brown here with you on this Monday morning. We are broadcasting from Atlanta, about 0.97 miles away from Truist Park, home of the Atlanta Braves. What a weekend. Brendan and I talking a lot yesterday. Takedown Saturday, okay? We're going to break it down, get a lot of smart analysis from Coach Ellis Johnson in the first segment. Alyssa Lang joins us at half past the hour from SEC Network. And then about a quarter till, Ken Capps will check in with the Texas, OU, and Texas A&M report out on the western flank. So, look, smash that subscribe button in the bottom right-hand corner. Smash it. And allow notifications. How, Brendan, on your Android and iPhone? Because we are broadcasting live, Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube. And what I want to say is that all the people that go to these football games, you get a thumbs up, man, because it's a passion. But without the fans, it ain't the same. So let's get started, man. Executive producer Brendan Martin in Ocala, Coach Ellis Johnson over in South Carolina, and Dave Tompkins in the Low Country in Beaufort, South Carolina. My son Wilson was at a wedding last weekend over in Bluffton, South Carolina. That is a beautiful place. A Memphis wedding, but it was in Bluffton because the bride went to the College of Charleston. I don't know what you can't love, what's not to love about South Carolina. Coach, I'm labeling it Takedown Saturday. I was in Auburn at the game. We started off watching that at Lake Martin, Florida, and Ole Miss. And then in between, you had Alabama and Oklahoma. Can you make any sense out of any of this?
Once again, the SEC cannibalizes itself. You mentioned something earlier that I didn't think about in all this melee. I was kind of been focused on who's going to get to the championship game.
Yeah.
And they've put some problems in the playoff picture now with these third losses on these guys.
Yeah.
A couple of them didn't shock me. Florida has been playing so well these last 2 or 3 weeks. When they got Lagway back, not only did they get a good quarterback, but he made a lot of other players better. They just could not get the ball to some of these kids that were really good players. I mean, they're a problem right now. Unfortunately, the season's about to come to an end. They're at least going to get in the bowl game. And then the other one was Auburn. It didn't shock me that Auburn was able to win a game. Texas A&M's not been the most consistent bunch this year.
Yeah.
And Auburn, they played it last week. They kind of found themselves, and they almost gave it back away. It was like the tale of two halves.
Yeah.
But it didn't shock me. They were able to get an upset there. Now, the Alabama game, I still can't explain it. I credit Oklahoma. I give them a pat on the back. But they've not been playing good football this year. They've had musical chairs at quarterback. But they've played hard, and they got a defense. And I don't know what Alabama did. It was shocking to me, and I did not see a whole lot of the game.
Yeah, it was crazy. And that call, Dave and Coach, he was covered up on Ryan Williams. I've never seen that called before, Dave. I don't know if you have either.
No, I unfortunately didn't see it. I was crying in my beer watching the game at Yankee Stadium. Yeah, I think the cannibalized point from Coach Johnson is spot on. I mean, here you have a 3-loss Alabama team and a 3-loss Ole Miss team, both of whom beat Georgia. And you're going to have a 1-loss Indiana team and a 1-loss Penn State team who neither has beaten anybody. Yeah. And you got to put them in the playoffs. But I think if Ole Miss were to play, say, Penn State in a neutral site, I think Ole Miss would be favored. Yeah. And I think that's what we have. That's sort of the new normal going forward, and the SEC cannibalizing itself. And it's going to be interesting to see how this all shakes out in the next few years. But no excuses for Alabama. I mean, they have really stunk it up in at least half the games. They've had a couple masterpieces, but I mean, there's just no excuse for Saturday night in Norman. That was pathetic in my opinion.
Yeah. Yeah. Coach, when you look at a game like Alabama and Oklahoma, and someone on the show, one of our guests last week, we had Chris Plank from the Oklahoma Football Network on, and I think it was brought up, Brent Venables, great defensive coach. And then about his wife, what she's battling. Man, he's got a lot on him, and he produced a masterpiece defensively.
Yeah. And they've played hard all year. They've
They
just
have.
had issues at quarterback. And hell, the whole conference, I'm not sure the SEC is as good as we all think it is this year. Physicality, athleticism, no doubt. But their quarterback situation through the league, there's only about 3 teams, in my opinion, had good, experienced, returning quarterbacks.
Yep.
And they all have been able to play every game this year. Texas had a little bit in and out with Ewers getting hurt. Georgia's had their guy all year. They hadn't played well around him sometimes. They've had their guy. Tennessee's got a rookie. Does not play as well as they thought he would. Texas A&M's had musical chairs at quarterback. To go down the list, now, LSU and Ole Miss, they've had their guy, and he played every week and so forth. But it's a league that has great athletes, but sometimes the quarterback play for different reasons is not as good as some of the other conferences. And as a result, I mean, you get some teams that have really good defense, and all of a sudden the quarterback can't function. I mean, Milroe, 3 turnovers, and I've been asked before, who would I rather have it of any SEC quarterback? And when they're playing well, I take Jalen Milroe. But it's been 2 games now this year that he didn't show up.
In the interceptions the other day, those are backbreakers. That hurt so bad when Danny Stutzman and Bowman for Oklahoma. There's 2 of the best defensive players on any team in America, and we talked, Dave and Coach. That's 2 programs, 2 of the top 6 winningest programs in the history of college football, and that tradition. There's a lot of pride there. But man, and now Oklahoma goes to LSU Saturday, Dave. That ought to be crazy.
Yep.
And the teams that we were criticizing profoundly, for the first half of the season are now trending up. Coach Johnson talked about Florida playing great football right now. Who else? I'm having a senior moment here. Oh, Auburn. I mean, and if the Iron Bowl was going to be in Jordan-Hare, I'd say I'd pick Auburn to win the game, and I think they're going to give Alabama a good game of Bryant-Denny. Auburn, they've been competitive in pretty much every game. They've shot themselves in the foot, snatching defeat from the jaws of victory, if you will. But they didn't do that Saturday night, and they played and they won, and they're peaking at the right time, and I think it's a very deep SEC, by far the deepest conference. But yes, because of the dearth of really quality quarterbacks, I don't think there's any standout team with the possible exception of Georgia, but we'll see.
Coach, when you look at this league and you talk about cannibalization, in '92, you were on the staff at Alabama with Coach Stallings, going into that first ever SEC championship game, December 5th of '92, and it was cold. It was like in the 30s at that game. What describe that locker room going in, because Florida was like 8-3, Alabama was undefeated, and it was like, we're gonna cannibalize ourselves, and look what happened.
Yeah, that's what everybody was afraid of back then, because obviously you didn't have these playoffs. 2 teams got sent to bowls somewhere and matched them up to try to prove who was best. Well, we needed that win, because I think we were still like number 4 or 5 in the country at the time. I'm not sure where Florida was ranked. But the Coach Stallings, I remember, kept telling the kids each week, we're unbeaten. He kept telling them, we haven't won anything yet. Haven't won a conference. Hadn't won a championship.
Yeah.
And hadn't won, gotten in a national championship. Got to keep playing. But it was, of course, that playoff game, that SEC game, probably was the incubator for all this stuff we're dealing with now, not just the conference championships, but I think people started seeing the interest and the money being made on the conference championships. Yeah. And they said, we need to be doing this with the whole NCAA. And then they started the BCS and all that. But don't get me started, because I'm not a playoff guy. I think they need to go back.
But back in 1992, what the world didn't know, but Coach Johnson did know, is that we had Antonio Langham and George Sieg.
Oh, God. Coach, I went through Town Creek a couple of weeks ago. I had run over to Athens to meet with Winter Timber Outdoors, our new sponsor. Were you the one that identified the guys over there in Town Creek, the Goods, and then Antonio Langham, because they play some great football over there?
No, those guys were already there or having played before I got there.
Okay.
A couple of them are older, and then there are two or three last names, and they're all related.
Yeah.
And, but that was some kind of little football town there. They produced about 5 NFL players over 6 or 8 years.
Yeah, it was amazing. All right, Coach, and I want to throw this one at you just for discussion. You look at Florida, and I told Brendan this yesterday, when I'm on the Buddy Martin show, which is on this channel, 9 p.m. Eastern, Monday through Thursday, before they started the 5-game stretch of Georgia and Jacksonville, Texas, LSU, Ole Miss, and Florida State, I predicted Florida would win at least 2 and maybe even a third of these last 5. And people get logo fever. Well, they've won 2 of them. Remember that Georgia game was tied at 20 apiece with 7 minutes to go. Lagway got hurt. Now they got Florida State. Nothing's easy. It's a rivalry, but they could exceed those expectations. What do you know about Billy Napier and Brendan chime in here too? Because isn't he from North Georgia? His father, I know, coached from a wheelchair at the end of his life. This kid he's as much of a coach as there is, isn't he?
Yes. And Billy was the quarterback at Furman when I was the head coach at Citadel. Of course, that was our big rival.
Yeah.
And, so I've known about him and who he was and so forth. Got to spend a little time around him. Unfortunately, we were recruiting against each other. When he was at Clemson, I was in South Carolina, and we were bumping heads over in Rock Hill. But I had coached over in high schools and had too many people hiding in the cracks and the corners, and he couldn't get those kids.
Yeah.
But I was so glad when they decided not to make a change. And Brendan may feel differently, but I think you're going to see more of that in these coaching decisions. And may have been luck, but Florida made the right decision. They should, unless they just absolutely lay an egg. They're going to beat Florida State. They're going to get in a bowl game, and they're probably going to win 8 games this year. And I hope they don't have a bunch of kids that opt out of the bowl game so that they can, play a really good game. And 8 wins after the way they started. And it really boils down to the quarterback issues they were having. They finally got the right guy. And those decisions are hard. Mertz was the leader on the whole team.
Well, yeah. And I wanted to ask you about that, Coach.
When you make that move, you can destroy your locker room if it doesn't work. So thank goodness it worked, because Lagway's been a huge key to this. And of course, they play with confidence, feeding off of him.
Mm-hmm. Coach, I wanted to ask you. I get a lot of stuff. Billy Napier was on the SEC network this morning, and he was doing an interview. It was just great. And they asked him, he said, "Well, Coach, aren't you glad to sit up and crow?" And now he had a good answer. He said, "Well, no, a lot of the criticism we wanted to play at, we were seeing it, we wanted to, be at that, level of winning." My question, and so I thought that was a really humble answer. So it feels like Billy does, learn along the way, makes his adjustments, and he's got his team going in the right direction, which is obviously, awesome. But my question is more long-winded. I apologize, but Graham Mertz wouldn't get hurt. There still be that quarterback controversy going on, I think, with DJ Lagway. And I think Coach is so loyal to his team and his players, and I think that's one of his qualities, but it could probably sometimes work against you. Do you think that Florida's having this success if they don't have a hurt Graham Mertz and he didn't have to make that decision to start DJ over him?
I think hindsight is totally right. and his decisions for making that switch, I think, were correct at the time. But what he was basing it off of, you had an inconsistent, young, talented kid that you weren't sure was what was going to happen. You got an experienced kid who's respected in the locker room and in the huddle, and he's capable, but it just wasn't clicking to a level they needed to win. So that's a hard decision to make. Now, you can see a lot of coaches, they pull that trigger a little quicker. And Oklahoma, for example, they pulled the trigger too quick back in the early part of the season and had to go back to the kid. I keep Jackson Arnold, isn't that it?
Yeah, that's it.
Because I always get it mixed up with Jackson Dart, but it's Jackson Arnold. Yeah. Thank goodness they had a quality kid that didn't, pack it in. And Arnold came back and it's really, that it helped him to get that benching for 2 or 3 weeks. He's come back, led that football team, and they're playing better offense now. if you pull a kid early in the season and you're too quick on the trigger, I really think Freeze did this early in the year. You're going to have a hard time going back to him. You've already said to him once in front of the fans and everybody else, if he doesn't play, you just basically said he's not good enough. We've got another kid we're going to try. Then you go back to him 2 or 3 weeks later, you may not have the same kid anymore. So that's always a hard decision. And, I think he made it for the right reasons, but there's no doubt Lagway's been the difference in this turnaround.
Yeah.
And out of nowhere, Billy Napier became a ESPN celebrity on game day last Saturday when he with the throwing the ball, trying to throw the ball over the crossbars and win $1 million from Pat McAfee.
Did he do it?
No, he just missed. He just missed. They have that little special they do on kicking, but they interviewed Billy, and he did a great job in the interview. I mean, he really came off well. He kind of had his A game, his media A game. And then they did a little contest where he was going to throw the ball over the from the 25 over the goal line. He almost did it. So anyway, I'm real happy for him.
It's almost a little fraternity, but you got Muschamp, Bobo, Kirby Smart, Billy Napier. I'm missing one or two off the top of my head. Bobby Lamb. All these guys, their dads were coaches in Georgia, and they became really good coaches themselves.
Yeah.
But it's really it's kind of like a little fraternity of those guys.
Yeah. I saw a thing on X last night of Kirby coming off the field against UMass Saturday, goes over there to see his wife, and then his mom and dad were there. Sonny Smart, coach down in Bainbridge, Georgia. Southwest Georgia's produced a few players. I mean, that is great football country. Coach, got to ask you about Ole Miss. Do you think Ole Miss got a little bit too cute with those analytics down there, trying to have Jackson Dart as a lead blocker for J.J. Pegues, who weighs about 325 pounds? I mean, I don't know. You're a coach. Because, I mean, Florida's got talent. People forgot when they were losing, they still had talent.
Yeah, when things like that, they've seen something on film. You know, what that thing they were doing with Pegues has been so effective, but I think the game before somebody loaded up on that side and just it was something probably that he saw that if they line up like that, all we have to do is let him just lead block over here and whatever. We'll go in untouched or whatever. But that's not their problem. Their problem is their defense didn't show up there, and they've been so good this year. Yeah. They have been really good. And they gave up some of those long passes at critical times and some other things to Ole Miss. But I thought that was where their issues were, was mainly on the defensive side.
What do you think about Lane Kiffin's comments after the game, kind of, criticizing, the playoff system? And I don't know if you heard him speak afterwards in his press conference.
I did not.
You guys hear him? Did you hear him, Dave or Jim?
I did not. I was going to make kind of a related point, but I'm interested to hear what his comments were.
Yeah, well, he basically came out, and I'm paraphrasing, but he's complaining about the system, and the way it's set up, it's a big decision to be, to playoffs. Like, he was clearly upset with the fact that they're done, and he was just it felt like he was whining a little bit, which felt like a sort of an older version of Lane Kiffin, which I felt were not probably the best comments. What would you think if, I know you didn't hear it, but what are your reactions to that?
Well, the system is a mess, okay? But not because Ole Miss didn't get in. It's just a mess. And you're gonna let a committee get together and pick who's gonna be in it. I don't care if they have 4 teams, 8 teams, 12 teams, or 20 teams. Somebody's going to be upset and mad and all that because the system is flawed. And again, I wish they'd just throw it all out and go back to the bowl games. If you don't think bowl games are great, you never got to go to one. It was the best thing in the world in college sports. But Daddy Warbucks Disney, that's who they work for now. Everybody works for Disney now, for the almighty dollar. Yeah. There's not a college football arena on that level anymore. That committee gets up in the morning. They're not working for the ADs or the football teams. They're working for Disney. And when they pick those teams for that bracket, you can bet brand names and other things are going to go into it.
Yeah.
Well, to me, the big question is scheduling going forward. So the NFL schedules that what they're trying to optimize, if you will, is around parity. They're trying to create parity in their scheduling.
Right.
Well, if the Big Ten is not trying to do that, and the SEC is, I'm not saying that's the case, but I'm just hypothetically, then we're shooting ourselves in the foot, because we're going to have a bunch of 3-loss teams. You know, this year's a great example where Penn State and Indiana are going to get in. And I don't think those teams could beat, you know, a 2-loss or even maybe a 3-loss SEC team. And so if we schedule for parity, we're just gonna continue to cannibalize ourselves, to Coach Johnson's point, and we're gonna get less teams in the playoff, and more Midwest and Northeast teams will get into the playoff, and that just doesn't seem right. And you know, so if I think scheduling is going to be so important going forward. You know, and you want to be able to schedule some of your tough games earlier versus in November, because if you have a really tough game in November before your rivalry game, before the Iron Bowl in Alabama's case, then you're going to get a lot of people hurt, and then that's just going to impact, you know, your rivalry game, the conference championship, if you get in, and then the playoffs. So I don't know, I'm rambling, but I think it's going to be really interesting to see how conferences schedule going forward, given the reality of the playoffs.
Yeah, it's going to be impossible. They're going to get on a rotational thing randomly. What the NFL does, as y'all well know, of course, they got divisions, but past the divisions, they look at the season before, and they try to gauge who the better teams are and make sure, you know, they play different games or whatever. But they can do it because there are fewer teams involved, and they have divisions and conferences, and it's not just a checkerboard out there where, you know, people are trying to schedule and rotate and make sure every kid plays on every campus and whatever else. But we've probably beaten it to death. I don't like the mega conferences. I don't like the system, how they pick to get in the playoffs. I really think all of it's just some kind of, if y'all remember, the reason we're on this number of teams is everybody was raising Cane at number 5 and 6 were just as good as 3 and 4. And we get more teams in there. At least the last 4 or 5 that get in won't be any good, but at least we'll make everybody happy that was number 5. I mean, it's never going to be any different. I don't care how many teams you have.
Yeah, and it's like,
I think this year, I think it's become clear that the top 4 teams are, in no particular order, are, so I'll list the SEC team first: Georgia, Oregon, Ohio State, and Notre Dame. Then I would include Texas at number 5, and then I think there's an enormous separation between number 5 and number 6 through 12 or 6 through 25. And so if this were last year and 4 teams are coming in, you know, that would be the argument, the 4 or 5. And you know, does Texas get in, or does, you know, one of the versus one of the Notre Dame or one of the Big Ten teams? But I think this year, where we are now, I think there are clearly kind of 5 teams that are sort of have created some separation over the rest of college football.
But only 2 of those 5 teams are going to get a bye. And I'm telling you, that bye is huge. It would be in pros, but it's huge on the college level because just of the consistency to win 3 games in a row against real good teams. We just got through talking about how hard that is, because you have to do that in the SEC, and most teams cannot do it. They cannot win 3 games in a row versus good teams. And even the teams that don't deserve to get in, they're still pretty good. If they won 10 games, they got a good football team. And you got to play 3 of those guys in a row to win that championship. The odds are very much against you. And somebody like Boise State's going to get a bye, you know, or somebody like that. And then Ohio State's going to be over there trying to win 3 in a row.
Yeah, Coach, this is an interesting comment from Perry Mason. I love Perry Mason. He is a citrus farmer down there in Central Florida. The SEC did a horrible job. They gave Texas a huge break on their schedule. And, I mean, you can look at that schedule, what Oklahoma had to play this year, Dave, and they just played Alabama. And Texas's schedule, Georgia came to Austin and whipped them. But there's a lot of truth in everything you say, Coach. But I think 80% of the TV sets in America reside in the footprint of the Big Ten. And connecting the dots, the terms of endearment in life follow the money trail. And
You got it.
I just, what I want to see, and Dave, you're right, I like that. Georgia, Ohio State, Oregon, and Notre Dame, in no particular order. But I've taken a lot of heat for saying Georgia's the best team in the SEC, but I still think they're the best team in the SEC. Do you know Brent Key, the coach at Georgia Tech?
I don't. Not well at all.
But I watched that game against NC State, against Dave Doran, and Thursday night. There's good football played everywhere. The SEC, when we separate the conference, Saturday lost potentially Ole Miss, Alabama, and Texas A&M. What if Texas A&M beats Texas Saturday? They go to Atlanta, and they're going to have 3 losses. They've got 3 losses now, and they win the conference. You're going to have a 3-loss team in the playoff.
Yep. I mean, it happened. Even they could put the 3rd loss on Georgia in the championship game.
Yeah, that's the point.
I don't know how. I don't believe Georgia will beat Texas twice in a row. You know, once in the regular season, and again, I don't know. Maybe they can, but I just don't think they'll beat them twice in 1 year. But bottom line, in the SEC championship game, you could have a 3-loss team come out of there that deserves to be in the playoffs. I don't know what the committee will do. I mean, who knows?
And with the playoff, if you don't get a first round bye, you have to win 4 games in a row. It's essentially a Sweet 16, because the second round is the round of 8. So
that's right.
I mean, it's even harder to have to win 4 games in a row. It's just
about trying to schedule. It's still a crapshoot even if you think you're scheduling, because nobody thought South Carolina was going to be a good team this year. They're a good team.
Yeah.
Now, on the other hand, I wouldn't want to play them right now, but on the other hand, they weren't one of the better teams all year long. But guess who they dodged? Everybody was talking about how brutal that schedule was, and it is hard because it's an SEC schedule. But guess who they dodged? Texas, Georgia, and Tennessee. And my gut feeling, that'll be the 3 teams from the SEC that get in the playoffs. So South Carolina didn't play as brutal a schedule as they thought coming into the beginning of the year. So you don't know. You can't predict how the schedule is when you see it, whether you really got some parity in there or not. I think it's impossible, that number of teams.
Yeah.
You know, and as we kind of, I'll continue the sort of the momentum of worst case thinking, but the worst case of you get to the semifinals, Final Four, and you have a team that's healthy versus a team that has a bunch of people that are banged up, and you know, what does that mean? And then you're looking over your shoulder at the bowl games, and no one's there watching them. And you have one team that's has everyone playing, and have another team where half the players have opted out. And then you compare that to say 1986, and you know when we all grew up, and you know you had the month between the end of the regular season and the bowl games, and everyone was fired up for the bowl games, and packed houses at all the stadiums, and it was just a wonderful holiday season. So yeah, it's I mean, probably half my mind is kind of for the playoffs, but listening to Coach Johnson, I'm becoming more of a naysayer, and yeah, it's really all about a TV contract.
It is, no question. It's chasing the dollar is what it is.
And Coach, look, before we let you go, we're going to bring Alyssa Lang just texted me. She's over in Charlotte, I guess, where she with SEC Network. She said, Rob, the city of Charlotte has decided this morning to tear up the sidewalks in front of my house. So she goes, if it sounds loud in the background, I'm like, hey, I'm used to loud. I've got a 2-year-old right in the next room next to me over at my daughter's house here in Atlanta. So far, so good. But Coach, awesome input. Your insight is incredible. And thank you so much. And we're going to do it again next Monday. I hope you have a happy Thanksgiving with your family. And I think you nailed it. Let's see how this 12-team playoff goes. I mean, it's cool. It's exciting. It creates interest around the country. But you know what? The wisdom that you bring to the table, and I think everybody agrees, is worth gold. So, man, it's something to think about on these playoffs and the cannibalization of the SEC. 32 years ago, it was the big fear, and here we go again. So we'll see what happens. Yeah.
And that Texas A&M game could be a it could be a horror show depending on how it comes out.
Yeah,
you could throw another.
Yeah, and those schools hate one another. it's rivalry week. All right, Coach. We'll see you next Monday. Thank you.
Enjoyed it, Rob.
All right, always. Dave, let's bring in Alyssa Lang. I want to say real quick hello to a couple of people that I met, Chris and Debbie Lagacy and their son Caden at Buc-ee's yesterday in Auburn. The kid's lips were all swollen, and they said he was a trombone player in the Auburn band. They live in Charleston, South Carolina, and so a lot of people from all over the place loving football, traveling. Let's bring in Alyssa Lang. Alyssa, great having you at the Touchdown Club in Memphis last week. You really know your stuff. You really are. Your parents are Hokies, which I love because a lot of my family are all Hokies. Give them hell. Let's talk about the SEC this past weekend, what you saw from your perspective. And I got to tell you, man, I call it Takedown Saturday.
Yeah, it was absolutely insane. And I'll start by saying, Rob, I texted you about this right before I came on. If it gets really loud behind me, my apologies. Today of all days, apparently the city decided that the sidewalk in front of our townhouse needs to go. And so they're out in front of it with whatever the tool is. They are drilling it to pieces, and it's been very loud on and off. So apologies in advance for that. But yeah, I mean, I said it last week on our SEC network shows. When you look at the schedule and the schedule looks boring, that's when you're going to get the most chaos. And that's when everything crazy is going to happen throughout the weekend. And that's exactly what we saw this past weekend with all these games. I mean, I knew that there was a chance that we would see one, maybe two upsets, but I didn't necessarily think that the chaos that we saw, not only in the SEC, but across college football would be as insane as it was. I'll pat myself on the back and say I was worried for Ole Miss. I did think that Ole Miss going down to Gainesville with how Florida had been playing would be a massive trap game. That obviously came to fruition, but I was shocked by what we saw from Alabama. I really, really was. I've seen Oklahoma a couple of times up close and in person. It's going to be a very interesting conversation now as far as 3-loss SEC teams go and the college football playoff. Maybe there's teams in the Southeastern Conference that end up sneaking into the CFP that weren't really in the discussion when we entered this past weekend. So this final weekend of the season is going to be, I think, even more insane. Texas A&M still controls their own destiny. We spent the last week talking about, well, would you want to make the SEC championship game? Well, is it a good thing? And I look at Georgia, who, heaven forbid, they lose to Georgia Tech this weekend. Say that something crazy like that happened. Georgia Tech's already beaten some good teams this year. Yeah. Don't you love having the opportunity to punch your ticket via the SEC championship game? And now for Texas A&M, obviously just losing to Auburn, you beat Texas and you're in the SEC championship game, and you win that and you're in the CFP. So all of a sudden it looks a little bit different to have the opportunity to go to Atlanta.
And you know what, Alyssa, the games, we were in Auburn for that game against A&M, and the A&M people – yeah, they know they're still alive. So are you going to be on that? Is that going to be one of your assignment this weekend? Are you going to be in College Station?
I wish. That would be a ton of fun. I will be in Columbia, Missouri for Arkansas, Missouri this weekend. So fun rivalry game there with two teams that are kind of in different situations, obviously, as far as postseason teams go. But, you know, can Sam Pittman and Arkansas end the season with a bang? You know, is postseason, I believe they're at 5 wins, correct me if I'm wrong, is postseason eligibility something that's in their future? Obviously for Missouri, I had them this past weekend at Mississippi State. We were all really curious to see how Missouri would show up after kind of being out of the playoff picture with that loss to South Carolina. And again, it's even hard to say that you're out of the playoff picture at this point when you're still in the top 25 because of everything that could happen around you. So really, you never know what could end up happening.
I think they're still very much alive. I mean, they're not in, but they're very much alive. And then, you know, leave the SEC for a second and you go to the Big 12. Brilliant. And I would argue that perhaps, I mean, Arizona State, but after Arizona State, Kansas might be the second best team in the Big 12. I mean, they're knocking off everybody. And it's just an insane year. And this was, Alyssa's right. This was an absolutely insane weekend of college football.
Well, Alyssa, Arkansas's got 6. So Arkansas's there. They're going to try to get 7.
They're there already. That's
Yeah,
right.
so-
Louisiana Tech this weekend was their bowl eligible
But
win.
I think that will be a cool game to go to because of all the storylines and everything like that. But yeah, that is, I mean, Arkansas wants that to be a rivalry too. They want it to. And I think Missouri does more than they do. Missouri's the one. So I think you're going to have a fun assignment. You know what? Just put me at an SEC game. I'm like, I don't care.
Exactly. The one bone that I have to pick about this upcoming assignment, and I usually do this probably midweek. I don't know why I did a little bit earlier this week. I usually will pull up the weather app and I will take a look at what the hourly forecast looks like for my game. How do I need to pack? How much do I need to layer? And I saw that the low in Como on Saturday is like 19 degrees. And I'm sitting here going, hold on a second. I wasn't prepared for this.
Yeah.
It got cold in Starkville on Saturday night too.
Yeah.
So I literally last night spent an hour. All right, I guess I got to dig out my winter coat from the attic and get it ready.
It's cold.
It's going to be cold.
Brendan,
It's cold in Florida.
I know you had a question. Yeah.
As a kid, I lived in Kansas City for 7 years, and when the heat gets turned off in that part of the country, I mean, it gets turned off. It gets so cold and so dry and so windy. I mean, 19 might mean, minus 16 wind chill because that's just what happens there.
The coldest game I ever did was about a negative 20 wind chill, and it was in Montana, Bozeman, Montana, for an FCS playoff game. And I thought I was really smart. Like, I was proud of myself for this, and it worked. I went and got those back heating patches for muscle relief.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I put them on my legs, front and back. I put them on my stomach. I put them on my back. And then I layered up. And when I tell you those worked to stay warm, it was amazing. It really was.
Alyssa, I used to work in sports TV broadcasting for years, and I did some of those early X Games, or actually the first X Games in Colorado. And I'm a Colorado guy, so I know cold weather and sitting on scaffoldings in the middle of 5 a.m. calls with snowcats barreling up on top of you. It is not fun. That's when you earn your paycheck. That's for sure. I didn't know. It's asked these guys. I was watching SEC Network this morning, as I do every morning, and I was. It was a nice interview with Billy Napier that they had on with Doring. What's your take on, because I had not heard Lane Kiffin's comments until I watched the SEC Network this morning and his post-game presser. What was your take on what he had to say just about college football playoffs and just the whole demeanor there?
So I saw some of his comments on the Saturday night show. You'll have to tell me specifically what you saw this morning.
Well, it's just on the SEC. Yeah, it was just on SEC Network. It was just post-game comments, just complaining about, the college football playoffs and the situation, and they're out of it. And he was sort of grousing about all of that. And I was wondering, because it was featured as a clip on, I think, Doring's show after the morning show and with Billy Napier at 8:30. And I just didn't know, what the sort of the take was. I'm friends with Chris Doring, so I always like to hear his take on it. I just know if you guys had mentioned that at all.
Yeah, so I haven't talked to CD since Saturday. Obviously, like you said, he's doing his show this morning, and I dive into game prep on Monday morning. So I haven't got to see or hear anything that they have said this morning or any of the sound that they ran back. But it is just such an interesting conversation, right? After Ole Miss lost to LSU, that press conference with Jackson Dart where he's got his head down and the towel over his head. He says, well, we have to win out. We have to win out because that's, you just don't know with the committee and what everything could look like around you. As great of a weekend as it was for Tennessee, you kind of hated to be Tennessee going into this weekend before all the chaos happened because, for the most part, you've taken care of business outside of that win against Arkansas, but you just don't know because maybe it's not enough. And the losses, maybe you're just not enough. For Ole Miss, having lost to Kentucky early in the season, knowing what kind of blemish that looks like. If they don't lose to Kentucky, we're not sitting here having this conversation. That's a home game that they should have won against one of the worst teams, or what ended up being one of the worst teams in the SEC. So, I'm not sure that I am ready to sign, seal, deliver Ole Miss out of this thing yet. I just think that it would be a little premature, again, given the chaos that could still happen this weekend, given what could happen in championship games. Because I sit here and I go, I heaven forbid any of this happen, but you could find conference championship games coming up in 2 weeks where a team gets absolutely blown out or a team loses a key position in a key place. And all of a sudden that's a different team. And the committee goes, well, we're not going to put this team that maybe just lost their starting quarterback for the postseason in the college football playoff, just like we saw for Florida State last year. So
Correct.
I don't think that it is. I wouldn't tell Ole Miss fans, like, get your hopes all the way up and you're going to the playoff and don't worry about it. But I also wouldn't tell them that they're fully out of it yet. And they could certainly put up some style points this weekend against Mississippi State in their last conference opponent.
Alyssa, of all the games coming up this weekend, which one is flying under the radar you think might be one of the bigger games? I mean, obviously for Arkansas and Sam Pittman, he's going to have hip surgery, I think, in the next week. And then you got December signing period coming up. But what's kind of catching your eye?
So I may be a little biased saying this, but I am really excited about South Carolina Clemson this weekend.
Yeah.
I think South Carolina is one of those teams that, I think back to that LSU game, and as a Gamecock alum, I sit here and I go, man, that LSU game hurts. 2 pick sixes called back, some questionable calls in the second half of that football game. You lose Lenora Sellers and your entire offense changes. It's sort of similar to Ole Miss, and I know it's woulda, coulda, shoulda, but if you end up beating LSU, this is a playoff team. This is a playoff team in Columbia, South Carolina that's playing like a playoff team right now. They go on the road to Clemson. I had that game last year. It was an ugly, ugly, low-scoring game in Columbia, South Carolina. It could end up being another one of those situations where, again, if there's chaos, which there probably will be, say South Carolina goes to Clemson and dominates the Tigers, it feels like there could be a real conversation for them to maybe be on a better bubble watch than they are now. And same is true for Clemson. Clemson is a team that we had high expectations for at the beginning of the season. I wasn't necessarily high on them, but you always have high expectations for Clemson. You beat a South Carolina team and a South Carolina defense that's coming into your house, and all of a sudden Clemson probably gets a lot more respect from the committee. So I think that's a rivalry game that always flies under the radar, quite honestly, having experienced it myself as a fan and as a journalist. So that is one. And I think Florida State all of a sudden just got a lot more interesting. I will say personally, I predicted that Florida would win 7 games this year. I got laughed at. I got drug across social media, and all of a sudden they're 1 game away from 7 wins. And if they can beat Florida State in a year where they really should, all of a sudden this looks really good for Billy Napier. 7 wins in a schedule like that. So I'm very interested in how that one goes too.
I think people need to not underestimate the grudge match of Florida State and how difficult it is for the Gators to go in to Tallahassee and win that game, because I've been to many of those games, and look, I've worn orange and blue on the sideline and they threw batteries at me. So like that place is a tough place. I'm joking around because I'm a Gator fan, and I'm still wearing my shirt. The Gators won it Saturday. I still have the shirt on. I'm not taking it off. I'm going to keep it on until they lose. So I got it. So all week I'm going to hold it out for you so I can get 7 wins. So you can be right, Alyssa. But
let's go.
Yeah. So but I think people need to understand that it's never an easy win to go in there, and no matter what the record is. But Florida's got one coming, especially with them coming into the swamp last year and pulling one over on the Gators.
Yeah. Florida State will always get up for that game, no matter what they've looked like this year. They will get up for that game.
Yeah, Dave, I think you had another question.
Yeah. Whoever wins the South Carolina Clemson game, that's a quality win. And one thing I really like about this selection committee for March Madness is they place a lot of merit on quality wins. And quality wins seem to trump bad losses most years when they're on who's in the bubble, last 4 in, first 4 out, the seeding, et cetera. And I think quality wins needs to have more merit in football as well, as we go forward with the playoffs, because I think what's so cool about March Madness, and it's going to be interesting to see if this happens in football, is obviously there's a Cinderella factor. That's a big part of the story arc every year. There's the epic matches, and then the best team almost always wins. After they play 6 games in the tournament. I don't know if that's going to happen this year because of injuries, because of how the seeding is going to be, et cetera, and having to win 4 games. We'll see. But I just really, if we're going to have a tournament in football, and in the first half of the show we make some arguments against having a tournament, it needs to have the same sort of story elements of March Madness. And I know that's not going to happen in the first year, but that's where it has to go if we're going to have a tournament.
Didn't Mike Leach say years ago, just get rid of the regular season and put 64 teams out there, play bracket style from start to finish? Like, maybe Mike Leach was right. He was right about a lot of other things.
Yeah.
Maybe he was right.
Yeah.
You remember you talked to him, man, that interview you did on the field with him. Man, look, I know you're on a tight schedule and we got to get you back on. You really know your stuff. I love Out of Pocket.
Thank
Randall
you.
Cobb's from Oak Ridge, Alcoa. Tennessee fans never got over him going to Kentucky. He is. Y'all are really good. You got great chemistry. We had Roman Harper on the show Friday. I love read and react, but keep doing what you're doing, man. I love what you do, and you're just going to keep rising because you bring a lot of enthusiasm, but you're always happy. We only bring happy, upbeat people on this show, and I didn't
Happy
hear any
jazz hands
jackhammer in the
people.
background.
That's what we do.
Yeah, with the jackhammers outside. How could you not be happy when
I
you're
can't
living in
hear it.
SEC country every day?
I've been
That
in the
makes me
swamp
so
all
happy.
weekend. I can't hear anything anyway.
I've got a granddaughter in the next room, but she ate, so she's okay. But we're in Atlanta all week. But Alyssa, how do people follow you on social media, keep up with you, and talk about your show, and we'll let you go.
Yeah, if you're still on Twitter, I'm on Twitter at Alyssa Lang, Alyssa
Absolutely.
G Lang on Instagram. So those are the two that I use the most. Occasionally TikTok, but not really.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Well, look, man, have a great week. Have fun out there in Missouri for the game. Dress warm. We'll be watching. You're a credit to the profession, man. I love it.
Thank y'all so much for having me. I really appreciate it. Hope we can do this again soon, and have a happy Thanksgiving, guys.
Same to you. Happy Thanksgiving.
We'll get the 7
Thanks,
wins
guys.
for you. Happy Thanksgiving.
Yeah, there you go.
8 wins. 8 wins.
Hey,
Yeah,
look, Dave.
I wanted to
Don't
call her
laugh. Brendan's got it on tape. When we picked preseason
Mm-hmm.
on the Buddy Martin show, I picked the Gators to go 8-4, and I thought they could do it. And I thought they would win at least 2 of the last 5 games, and people thought I was a heretic. I was taken away for re-education. But now, look in the background. By the way, Ken, I know you're a Texas grad, but does anyone ever eat Longhorn beef at a steakhouse? I've never had it before because Bevo is a fine-looking young man there. Well, he still is, but that is just a beautiful background. How you doing?
I'm doing great today. And after Saturday night and watching your game and watching the Sooner shocker, my head, I need to go to therapy today or something. I just can't believe what happened. And, I was telling you, I wanted to tell a funny story about watching the 2 games at my mother's house, my 90-year-old mother's house, and in Austin. And I think everybody on the left hand of the screen here, and a lot of our fans will appreciate this. I've got a 90-year-old mom that she does finally have a flat screen TV, but it's not a smart TV. Okay, it's not a smart TV. Okay, so you understand. So, in our house up here, we now have one of those fancy TVs where you can watch 4 games at the same time. Okay, at my mom's house, you can only watch 1 game at a time. Okay, so me and my buddy Joe are at the Texas Kentucky game. We come back home so we can to my mom's house. It's still home to me. Go back home so we can watch Auburn A&M and Sooners Alabama. And but we're having to flip back and forth. And so it was the wildest thing. Every time we would flip the channel, Auburn was shanking a punt or missing a field goal. We would flip the channel again, and Milrose getting picked 6 or getting sacked, or Jackson Arnold is running for 20 yards. And I couldn't take it anymore. It was just overload. And I was like, I was going to have to go get another TV or something and put it in the room. And, you become so accustomed to be able to watch, 2 or 3 games, 4 games at a time that, flipping it back and forth. It was just so funny. It was driving us nuts. And wow, those 2 games were so crazy. And now remember what I've been saying for like the last 4 weeks. It was going to take a miracle for the Sooners to get to 6 games and to keep their bowl streak alive, which is the second longest bowl streak behind Georgia at 27. Oklahoma was at 25. Well, now they've had their miracle. Sooner Magic is kicked back in. They're going to go to a bowl for the 26th straight year, which is the second longest bowl streak in college football right now. And I love the way it ended. I really did. They're Big Tony.
Big. Oh no. Well,
I'll finish the point here. Oklahoma and Vanderbilt own the state of Alabama.
Yeah, they do. It's been a rough year. Ken, you heard what Dave just said. Dave's a Mountain Brook guy, West Point grad, Alabama fan. But he said, Oklahoma and Vanderbilt own the state of Alabama. The Sooner pride, man. Boomer. Sooner.
I mean, and here's Jackson Arnold. He's gone from hound to hero. I mean, Venables was even saying a couple of weeks ago, well, we're going to have to talk to him at the end of the season, about whether he's going to stay or not. Now it's going to be his decision whether he's going to stay or not. And man, to unleash, I mean, what a brilliant idea to unleash him as a runner.
25 carries
for 131 yards. And then, okay. Thank God. I thought my internet's working. My internet's working great today. But the other thing is, I don't know if you heard the announcers. They kept calling, telling him he was from Geyer, Denton. It's Denton Geyer. He's from Geyer High School in Denton. That's right here in the Metroplex. Okay. So, but I was really impressed with him. But what I was trying to say before I went out there for a minute, I love the way they ended the game. They're big Toby Keith fans up there. He was a big OU supporter. So they start playing when the clock hits 0, they start playing as loud as they can on the speakers. How Do You Like Me Now by Toby Keith. Everybody starts jumping over that wall and just going crazy. Yeah. It was the OU and OSU called their series Bedlam. That to me was Bedlam. And of course, Bob Stoops got honored at the beginning of the game. I wish I would have, I really thought seriously about going to that game. And now I'm having a little FOMO about it, covering that game for football writers, because wow, that's just a game for the ages. But let's go to your game, Rob. Are they auditioning kickers and punters at Auburn today? Do they have something on social media, or do you have any eligibility left?
Well, let me tell you what happened. Josh Chapman, Auburn's kicker from last year, who did not miss, got a stomach ailment over the summer and lost almost 60 pounds. Then they brought in Towns Magoo from Auburn High School, who could kick it 100,000 miles, as Larry Munson said, but he shanks them left or right. Then this other guy they got, I think they pulled him out of an engineering class, the E-Lab. I'm not sure. But let me say something about some of our sponsors real quick. Like House Industries, they make all the big agricultural products, the better roller, the pulverizer, the better chopper. But really, they make the aerators as well for the catfish farms. If you love a blackened catfish sandwich, catfish po' boy, you'll love HouseIndustriesInc.com in Cherry Valley, Arkansas. Landers Ford, $500 off for SEC Sidelines audience members. The #1 Ford dealership in the Mid-South, LandersFordMemphis.com. Open Monday through Saturday, 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. Service and sales. Ask for Brad Bellamy, the general manager out there. If you didn't buy your last car, truck, or SUV from Landers, you probably paid too much. And Winter Timber Outdoors, Athens, Alabama, they're going to grow in the footprint that is the SEC. Broke ground last week on the new store in Auburn. They're looking at Athens. They're looking at Fayetteville. They're looking all over the SEC. Over 2,000 shotguns, rifles, and handguns in the store. The staff knows what they're doing. Kenny Winter and obviously Winter Timber Outdoors and Dylan Monroe, his COO, are definitely squared away. Look, if you hunt ducks, deer, pheasant, quail, turkey, grouse, geese, all the shooting sports, they've got everything you need. Sitka, all the clothing, the gear. Winter Timbers Outdoor. Athens, Alabama now, coming to Auburn in an SEC town where you will be proud to have them as a sponsor. Dave, respond to what he just said. I thought that was a great litany of facts that he laid out there. And it got so bad, by the way, for Jackson Arnold a few weeks ago. Somebody on the TV called him Arnold Jackson. Hey, Arnold, remember that god-awful cartoon?
First off, going all the way back to the era of Jack Mildren when he was the quarterback at Oklahoma, I believe Athens, Alabama is the home of Wilbur Jackson, number 80, the great running back for the Crimson Tide from way back when. Oklahoma was down and out all year. But I mean, that's a proud school. That's a proud program. It's a proud tradition. They're a hugely tough out when they're playing Norman. And, after it happened, I'm like, well, I should have expected it. I mean, I go all Saturday afternoon. I'm like, no way we're going to lose. But we just self-destructed. Venables he's a tremendous defensive coach, and I've always thought he could transition to being a really good head coach.
Yeah.
And maybe that Saturday night was his coming out party. With everything going on in his life, I hope so. Yeah. I love a strong Oklahoma in the conference. Having Texas and Oklahoma just makes it. Which we talked about earlier in the show. There's some cannibalization going on. What's that going to mean going forward for the SEC and getting as many teams in the playoffs as possible? I'm just really interested about what's going to happen Saturday at Kyle Field and just how freaking loud it's going to be there. I mean, it is going to be so loud. I cannot wait to watch that game. I'm pulling for Texas. One of my best buddies, a big Longhorn guy. So, but that's just going to be, I think, an incredible scene in College Station.
Ken, you know where Cleburne, Texas is?
Of course.
Yeah, I got Casey Goodjohn listening right now, and he's a Marine I met a year ago at Orange Beach surf fishing. Did 20 years in the Marine Corps. Aggie through and through with 4 daughters. What a great man. There's a special place in heaven one day for a man to have 4 daughters, and I've got 2 now and 2 boys, and we're in Atlanta. I missed opening weekend of duck season. I can't remember the last time I did that. It was November 18th and 19th of 2011, and they killed 168 ducks when I wasn't there. This time they killed 197. Great start to the season, by the way. Started in Arkansas, people. But Ken, all right, as far as Bevo goes, I like what Dave just said. The crowd, the intensity. Talk about that rivalry with A&M and Texas, and what's on the line makes it even more attractive to the TV eyeballs.
Well, I mean, look at it this way. They haven't played in 13 years. Texas, the last time they played, Justin Tucker, who is now a Hall of Fame kicker in the NFL, kicked a walk-off field goal in College Station and to win the game 27-25. Texas plays that clip at every home game since then. And, you see that the Aggies had to live with that for 13 long years. And, they've been loaded for bear ever since then. And believe it or not, Texas just here with one loss at home to Georgia, and A&M with that blowout loss to South Carolina. And then, your boys there in Auburn taking them to 4 overtimes and winning. Somehow, I really don't understand this, but somehow if A&M wins, they go to the SEC championship game with two losses in the SEC, and Texas only has 1. I guess because they would own the tiebreaker over Texas. If Texas wins, they go to the SEC championship game, and don't look back, don't collect $200 when at the Monopoly table. So it's for all the marbles. It's a night game, which will make it even crazier. The only thing is the game's on Saturday, which for us purists here in Texas, that game belongs on Thanksgiving, which is where it always was, or at the very least on Friday. But a lot of concessions were made. And that's what Greg Sankey decided that it was going to be on a Saturday. So hopefully. I know that everybody said that Texas doesn't run the SEC, but hopefully Chris Del Conte, the athletic director at Texas, might be able to finagle something down the line. I know that those SEC Thanksgiving games are set now, but Texas and Texas A&M, is a 118-year tradition. Now this will be the 119th year that they've played. And, most of those games have been played on Thanksgiving. So it's for all the marbles. This is even bigger than Texas OU to a lot of people because you've got a lot of households, that one side of the Thanksgiving table, they went to the kid went to A&M. The other side of the Thanksgiving table, the kid went to Texas. And, them's fighting words. And, there's flags made just like there are, with Auburn and Alabama, a house divided. And
it is.
Yeah. And, Texas, I see Texas opened as a 7.5 point favorite. That's not surprising to me. But I'll tell you one stat I found, though, that's very, very interesting. And I know we'll talk about this a lot on Friday. I can't wait to have a lot of my facts and stats together for Friday. But here's an interesting stat. Sark and Mike Elko have already met twice, on the football field. And that was when Sark was the offensive coordinator at Alabama.
Yep.
And Elko was the defensive coordinator at A&M. Alabama and Sark beat Elko and A&M twice, And Sark's offense versus Elko's defense put up almost 500 yards per game on Elko's defense. So I don't, that's an interesting stat. What Mark Twain said about stats. Don't mean a damn thing. But I just thought that was interesting that that Sark's offenses put up that many yards on Elko's defenses. And and again, you look back at A&M. A&M. I was very impressed, Rob, how Auburn pretty much kept a lid. I mean, as much as they could, put a lid on Marcel Reed all night. I mean, he got his yards here and there, but they stopped him a lot and sacked him a lot and stayed on top of him. And back to what Dave was saying, I mean, I thought Venables had a brilliant game plan on just keeping Milroe in check and just being on top of him. And God, it seemed like I don't think he got a big scramble one time, and being able to sack him all the time and keep him from running for big games. And of course, the pick six was the giant killer, in my opinion, in the OU Alabama game. Wouldn't you agree?
Absolutely. I think Venables did a job Saturday night as he used to do when he was at Clemson and in Clemson's 2 national championship. I think it was Jalen Hurts that in that case just had him completely bewildered, and he had Jalen Milroe completely bewildered. And Jalen Hurts is a smart guy, as is Jalen Milroe. But Venables was able in both those situations just to completely just befuddle the quarterback and the offensive coordinator. So give them all the credit in the world. And then looking ahead for the SEC, how awesome is it that this Saturday going forward is going to include both Texas A&M, and the Iron Bowl? I mean, that is just is just epic. And,
it will be, David. And correction here real quick on the kicker, Doug Dean. I was with him. Just reminded me, I was saying Josh Chapman. No, it's Alex McPherson from Fort Payne, Alabama, Auburn's kicker that's been out, lost about 60 pounds. But yeah, that normally is a guarantee that Auburn will have good kicking. And special teams guys are a third of every game. And along the line of what both of y'all are saying, the TV, like I say, we're over here with Mallory. She's an Alabama grad in the room next door. Wife is a Vol. I've got Auburn. I mean, I've got Gators. We're all over the place. But guys, that Hook'em Hut, I absolutely love the Hook'em Hut. Now, Dave, Ken, you've got the internet perfect. Whatever you did, you got Starlink or whatever. That's what I'm going to get over there at the farm. But keep doing what you're doing. And Dave's going to get a Yeti Blue mic with the headphones. Get you one at Best Buy. With the headphones like this and a Yeti Blue mic, you will sound, because Dave's got a broadcast voice, and the data that comes out of his noodle is amazing. And for both of y'all, I'm going to throw another thing at you. These rivalry games. I'm like Blind Squirrel Sports. It's going to be hard. I mean, and I ran into a lot of people over the weekend that watch our show and that will be watching now It's really cool when you go to a Buc-ee's. Boy, we were at the Buc-ee's in Auburn yesterday, and we stopped at the one in Leeds, Alabama, Friday night on the way over from Memphis to Atlanta. My goodness. Wow. You talk about, look, Buc-ee's needs to be the official. You know what? A friend, Billy Roberts, and I were driving back to Atlanta from Auburn, Lake Martin yesterday. Billy made a great point. He said, someone said, what is Buc-ee's? He said, imagine if a truck stop and Walmart had a baby. It would be Buc-ee's.
I have to jump off, but I'll throw one more Texas kicker. A Texas kicker out there, Russell Erxleben. Was that?
Yes. One of the greatest names of all time.
Hit the 67-yard field goal in 1977. I was there. I was a mere 16 years old at the time. And I mean, that was unheard of. Now you've got these kids kicking 50 and close to 60 all the time. That was unheard of. And if you recall, I love that piece of trivia, Dave, because the next week, Steve Little at Arkansas kicked another one that was just as long. And then who was the kicker at Tony Franklin at A&M?
Oh,
he was also
there you go. That's it.
I'll tell you,
all in the Southwestern Conference.
And the all-time Mount Rushmore of kickers names. Remember Arkansas legendary kicker Ish Ordonez.
Yeah.
I was about to say Jan Stenerud, but
Jan was not from Arkansas. He was.
I don't think Jan Stenerud's from Arkansas. No.
I think he's from Norway or Sweden.
Hey, Dave, Jan Stenerud was my favorite kicker as a kid. And I one time got on an elevator in Atlanta at the downtown Omni, and Hank Stram was on there. And I told my dad, and I said, I almost did it. I almost pulled that rug off his head. I almost did it. Hank Stram, that Monday Night Football and CBS football, you can't get better. Hank Stram and Jack Buck. My God. Hey, Dave, I love the Russell Erxleben. But I'm going to tell y'all something. This season, Takedown Saturday was crazy. But by God, the interest. I'm telling you, at Buc-ee's yesterday, there were literally thousands of people there at the one in Auburn. And you've got fans. I ran into Gators, Bulldogs, Alabama people, Razorbacks, everywhere. And they love college football. It pulls people together. I mean, just Ken, the smart TV thing, like Dave and I were talking, you got 4 of them going, and
right.
I go to mom and dad's, and it's like, well, boy, switch over to that other game. I'm like, Dad, just get the smart TV. He goes, what are you talking about? I'm like, just do it.
Maybe Santa will bring my mom one of those TVs, and my buddy Joe, he's the techno geek, and I'll get him to set that up, because like I said, after Saturday, I was just going absolutely crazy. But it was so much fun. But let me just say before we get off the air, I know we're getting close. We do have something to watch this week.
Yeah.
Quinn Ewers tweaked an ankle against Kentucky. And I don't know if you guys watched the game. He was limping around in the fourth quarter, and for some reason, and it was senior day, and he did participate in senior day activities. I don't know if Sark wanted to leave him in because it was senior day and it was his last game at Memorial Stadium or what. Because I think a lot of people were saying, hey, why not bring Manning in and just let him finish out the game and let Ewers rest up for A&M. But he kept limping around out there. He had an MRI yesterday, Ewers did, and he does have a mild ankle sprain. So, because you were talking about how crazy it's going to be Saturday night. I'll tell you one thing about Mike Elko's defense: they are going to come storming in on Ewers every stinking play, and that offensive line better be ready, because you've seen that Ewers has a real tendency to get sacked.
Yeah, look, we got to wrap it up, but great show today. Dave Tompkins over in the low country of South Carolina, Ken Capps, Coach Ellis Johnson, Alyssa Lang, executive producer Brendan Martin. Most often we see the face of Christ in the least among us. Find ways to help people out every day. Give with the expectation of getting nothing in return, and you will be richer for it. Guys, happy Thanksgiving. Man, it gets
Happy
better
Thanksgiving.
every day. And thanks for watching, everybody. See you at Buc-ee's sometime. Thanks,
Yes.
Janet Bell, for the tailgate Saturday, and Billy and Doug and Frank. Great American people that we met. The legacies from over in Charleston. Thanks for watching. We'll see you tomorrow. Good night, John Boy.
In a perfect world, you'd set a health goal and results would happen overnight. In this world, the real world, it takes time, dedication, and the right support to achieve your best self. The Vitamin Shop's health enthusiasts are here to make sure you're not wasting a single moment on the wrong supplements. From the highest quality sports nutrition and superfoods to the most sought after trends, you'll find a huge variety of science-backed solutions for every goal. And the people to help guide you along the path to greatness.
Unbelievably, every 2 minutes in our communities, a child is either bought or sold for sex. I am Ari Dickey, board member for the Nashville Anti-Human Trafficking Coalition. Join me and millions of others in our fight against human trafficking and for its victims by helping to educate the most vulnerable among us, our middle and high school students. Go to nhtcoalition.org, become a partner, and help keep our families safe, because none of God's children are for sale.